betrayal. To me, the thing that is worse than death is betrayal. You see, I could conceive death, but I could not conceive betrayal. Malcolm X. Even as the phone rang, I was having second thoughts. Ring. What if they're bluffing? Ring. You weren't raised like this. Ring. Luckily, he picked up the phone, or I might have talked myself out of the shit. Attorney Wayne Higgins, how may I help you? Yo, Wayne, this is Kev. Hey, what's up, Kev, man? Listen, if you go down to speak with them, folks with me, I'll go. All right, let me make some calls and set it up. Wayne called me back after a few minutes and told me the meeting was set. This was the day before Thanksgiving. He and I made arrangements to meet downtown at their offices when the world and the dope we walked. Game had were already prepared with changed mental games. They had pictures of these new 4 snitches from my crew on the guys in the game were fucking bored. Uchi Sire, the tight pants Reaper, and Dirt Rock. I pretended like bitches, like I didn't see the pictures, and into the room they said, show me what you got. They pulled down the video projector screen and showed a few minutes of footage of 9 people leaving my house. The footage started off showing my son and my son's best friend, who was living with us at the time, bringing some men's land bags into the house. They made it look like my son and his friend brought me some kilos in the men's land bags, but they didn't. That part they had wrong. My son and his friend were coming to show me the school clothes they had bought. I happened to use the same men's land bags for the people that came to purchase kilos from me later that day. So it did look like my son brought the kilos to me. The room was quiet as we looked at the footage. Then one of them said, "You had a hell of a day this day," which was true. I happened to sell 35 kilos that day. Then they showed footage of all the people that left from my house that day with those men's land bags, as well as footage of each one of them getting pulled over after they left my house. Not one of them motherfuckers said, "Kef Didi, they're on your ass." They stopped me when we left your spot. I'm talking about some of my closest friends, and not one of them said a word. One of the agents said, "The dope game is over, Kef D. Did any of these dudes do that?" They got pulled over that day. I just stared at the screen and remained quiet because the honest answer to the question was too painful for me to face. The agent continued, "These dudes are weak. It's not the same anymore." I couldn't disagree. I trusted those dudes, and I shouldn't have. The world and the dope game had changed. These new guys in the game wear tight pants like bitches. Even in the rap game, niggas wear skinny jeans, girl blouses, colored hair. That's some bullshit. For more than 15 years, the feds had been on my ass about those 2 hip-hop murders. Even when I was locked up for years, they wouldn't leave me alone. During the meeting, the feds told me that they had 18 people who had gone to the grand jury to testify against my ass. It's mind-boggling to me because I didn't even have 18 people close to me like that. It meant my homies, even some of my kinfolks, would have gone down there on my ass. My mind started flashing back to some of the niggas whose pictures were up. 189 on that board and a few that weren't. It all started to come together and make sense. VVV, the Reaper, one day while over on Thin Out Over Hill in my partner Bubble Up's living room, Uchi, Dirt Rock, and a guy named Tucker pulled up in Tucker's Cadillac truck. These were 3 guys that were close to me, especially Uchi, Dirt Rock, and the Reaper was a motherfucker that earned his nickname. That little nigga was cold. Tucker jumped out of the Cadillac truck and said, "Man, we just seen the Reaper." The Reaper was the guy in the car with Baby Lane when he got killed. The Reaper was sentenced to 3 life sentences in that case. In that shootout, not only did my nephew get killed, but 2 other guys also died. The Reaper was a motherfucker that earned his nickname. That little nigga was cold. The Reaper spoke with the feds and alleged that first supplied him with weapons and ordered a whole bunch of hits. Surprised, I asked, "You just seen the Reaper?" "Yeah," all 3 confirmed. "Where at?" "At the basketball game," which was some 190 illogical shit to say. At the time I was dealing with the Reaper's cousin, and she told me that the Reaper was downtown at MDC. I thought to myself, what the fuck is the Reaper doing at MDC? He ain't got no business down at the MDC because he has a state case. Then these 3 dudes jumped out the truck and told me that they had seen the Reaper that day. At that moment, I realized how those 3 saw the Reaper. They were all at the grand jury together, including the Reaper. They just changed where they said they saw him. I could picture that shit. Those motherfuckers did see the Reaper. From that, I knew for sure those 4, the Reaper, Uchi, Dirt Rock, and Tucker, was part of the 18 who were on the grand jury against me. They were guys I would be with every day. VVV, Uchi. Uchi was the guy I trusted to handle my phones, so every month when I would change my numbers, he was the one responsible for getting me my new numbers. What I learned later on was that Uchi was getting my new numbers and giving them directly to the feds. When that fat FBI agent started imitating Uchi's voice and saying things like "what it do" and using mannerisms that came directly from my homie, it became evident that he turned on me. That shit made me cry. I remember the day he flipped because we had one of his people named Joe from Long Beach that would buy 2 chickens every 3 days. Uchi came over, picked up the 2 chickens and said, "I'll be back in about 30 minutes with the money." When he left the spot, the feds pulled his ass over. He was gone for 3 or 4 hours, but he was pulled over by the feds the whole time. I kept calling him, but he didn't answer. "Where's Uchi ass at?" What happened was, the feds took the chickens from him, let him go, and told him he was now working for them. In an attempt to cover his ass and buy some time, he picked up the dude's money and turned it into me. About 3 or 4 days passed, so I asked Joe if he wanted to buy some more chickens. That's when I learned Joe didn't have any more money to buy chickens because he had already paid Uchi, but never received the chickens because the feds had it. VVV, Dirt Rock. There was a little team of Southsiders who had gone out to Virginia and started rolling, selling work. Dirt Rock was one of them. They got busted in Virginia but didn't ever tell me about it. When they got busted, they told Virginia police what had become niggas 192. For my hood's get out of jail free pass, Kefa D killed Tupac. Virginia law enforcement contacted the LA FBI field office to share what they had been told. Meanwhile, I was out. Dirt Rock was one of the dudes that was a part of that triple murder case, and now he's walking the streets just so they could bring down Kefa D in Cali, doing my thing with my homies when I ran into Dirt Rock at a barbershop. "Hey Kefa D, my brother-in-law wants to buy some keys." Alright, y'all meet me at my spot in Paramount. Dirt Rock came out to Paramount and copped some kilos from me. When he came in, I felt something was fishy because the money he paid with was all fucked up. The nigga came with all $100 bills, but he had them in $1,000 stacks. From my experience in the dope game, if you have all hundreds, you put them on one rubber band. You don't put them in 1,000 stacks. I didn't feel good at all about that day. Then the feds sent him back to buy some PCP from me. The money he came with was the same fucked up way. $100 bills stacked in thousands. I felt that the money wasn't right, but I gave the homie the benefit of the doubt. Dirt Rock didn't only have his problems from selling dope in Virginia, but the nigga also caught a triple murder case in Louisiana. One of my little homies had a Cadillac truck that he wanted to sell for $46,000 cash. He put an ad in the local paper, and some guys said they wanted to buy it. They set up a location to meet, and when the guys pulled up in their Mercedes-Benz, my homeboys drew down on them. They took the money, put the guys in the Mercedes-Benz and shot them all in the head. Then they went and dropped the car off in a Starbucks parking lot in another city. But the surveillance camera at the Starbucks recorded them dropping the car off. The car sat there for about 3 weeks and the body started stinking. The police researched and found the original truck ad with the number that was listed and eventually tracked them down. Dirt Rock was one of the dudes that was a part of that triple murder case, and now he's walking the streets so that they could bring down KFDVV. Tucker. Tucker was a young guy from my hood that was one of the best high school basketball players on the West Coast. As a youngster, I took him to a couple of fights to show him the ropes. He was recruited by Arizona State to play basketball, but that got derailed when Tucker, George Gervin's son, and another recruit were 194, accused of physically and sexually assaulting some girls, so they were kicked out of school. He ended up getting a scholarship to Pepperdine. My boy Victor, the youngster from Lakewood Mall that took the death row chain, got killed hanging out with Tucker. The day Victor got killed, I went to pick him up from his house. Victor, Lane, and them said, come on, they just did something. He came to my truck and said, Kef D, I'm going to Pepperdine to spend the week with Tucker up at the dorms to fuck with them broads. All right, cool, be careful. So I took off. By the time I got to Hawthorne, I got word that Victor had been shot. Tucker had gone into the weed spot and Lil Ace was up in the shop. He asked Tucker, who is that? Victor in the car. Tucker answered, yeah, we're fixing to go up to Pepperdine. Lil Ace was from Southside also. Lil Ace left the weed spot and shot Victor in the head while he was sitting in Tucker's father's car. Tucker had to get on the stand on Lil Ace cause he killed a guy in his car. Tucker started playing basketball with Pepperdine, and one day Baby Lane and I were sitting up in the trap when Tucker came over and said, the feds pulled me over. Kef D, the feds pulled you over? Yeah, I was coming from college and they were 195, asking a lot of questions about you. This was a few days before they took me down. Lane was laying on. I didn't want to do no punk ass shit. That was against my code, against everything I stood for and believed in. The couch acting like he was asleep. When Tucker left, Lane said, that nigga is off his rocker. Something wrong with that nigga. For real? Yeah, I don't trust that nigga. But I give him credit, he was actually telling the truth. VVV, Menace. Menace had become my right-hand man because he was dating my daughter. I wanted him to be able to provide for my daughter, so I made sure he was making money through hustling. Menace had an apartment in Paramount, which is where we were doing a lot of our transactions at the time. As part of that task force, the feds also had an apartment in the same apartment complex. I figured, one day, when Menace was in there by himself, the feds ran in there on his ass, and he never let me know. A few months after Dirt Rock copped the gallon of PCP from me, Menace came and said he needed a gallon of PCP. My cousin Speedo only had one left. I told Speedo to go ahead and give it to Menace, and that he would bring the money back. Menace took 196, the gallon, and then brought it back 30 minutes later and said it wasn't any good. 30 minutes after that, my cousin Speedo called me, Cousin Keith, that motherfucking Menace set me up. Why you say that? You know damn well that was the best water, PCP, in town. His house right now is right in a team. He set me up. I'm gonna get that. Motherfucker. I defended Menace. There's no way he could do that to you. My cousin said, if you think I'm lying, go. By my house right now. I jumped in my ride and rolled by Speedo's house, and sure enough, there was a fire truck, hazmat team, FBI agents, and people in chemical suits going into his house. I was trying to give Menace the benefit of the doubt, but as I look back at everything, it's clear that Menace did set my cousin up. The way I know Menace set my cousin up is because once the feds came in on me, they told me that my family had the best PCP they had ever tested. All of them dudes were folding like folding chairs. The guys who flipped on me, some of them, were even my family members. They don't know, but they would have been looking at 20s to 30s years if it wasn't for me. Some of them have the nerve to be out in the streets and on social media talking shit. What they don't know is the feds were going to press them. All for money, and whoever didn't kick in was going to jail. We're doing a fundraiser. We need some money for Kef D. He saved y'all ass. The feds are that cold. I told them, hell no, don't press nobody. Don't do that shit. Leave that shit alone. Over the years, I've been asked why I ignored some of the red flags that popped up around me. All I can say is I could never imagine that the fellas I had around me would be so weak and flip on me like that. Especially since we had such a good thing going. Once my mind stopped wandering, and they were finishing up their presentation, they said, Kef D, enjoy your holidays. We need your decision by January 9th. After I saw all the evidence they had, and all the people that had flipped on me, I realized I was. If y'all think I'm gonna run around here buying kilos and setting up my peers and all that old shit, you can lock me the fuck up right now, cause I'm not doing that shit. Cooked grease. I didn't go home and tell anybody in my family that I went down to meet with the feds. In fact, I didn't tell anybody, period. That whole next week, I couldn't even sleep from the stress of thinking about my predicament. I didn't want to do any punk ass shit. That was against my code, against everything. 198. I stood for and believed. That's the main reason First fought my family so hard, is I knew that there was a code on the streets, and in an earlier period I would die fucking around with the police like that. I've been living this life for years, and I had never done that to anybody, never would do that to anybody. I wanted to tell them, feds, fuck it, I ain't doing that shit. Take everything because I don't do that. Knowing, as part of their mind game, I'm a family man. They gave me Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's too. Think about it, that was the most stressful, fucked up time in my life. I was dazed and confused. From the minute I walked out of their offices, I haven't felt the same. I feel like a dirty, rotten son of a bitch about what to do. January 9th came, and my attorney Wayne Higgins and I went on down to their offices to meet. With them, the task force was feeling some heat on their side because Biggie's mother was suing the Los Angeles Police Department for hundreds of millions of dollars, so they were willing to offer me an exceptional deal because they seriously thought that South Side had killed Biggie. They offered to let me go for running a criminal enterprise and numerous alleged murders for the truth about the Tupac and Biggie murders. They promised they would shred the indictment and stop the grand jury if I helped them out. The task force was after me, but in the process, some big-time players I was dealing with got dragged into it. 40 people were going to jail behind my drug dealing if I told the feds to go fuck themselves. Most of us would have gone to prison with life sentences because we had already been to the feds. Proffer sessions, also known as Queen for a Day or King for a Day sessions, are agreements between federal prosecutors and people under criminal investigation. Their proffer was to allow me to tell the government about my knowledge of the Tupac and Biggie murders with the assurance that whatever I told them would not be used against me. There was a room full of people waiting for me when I got there. One agent said, I was sent from the Justice Department in Washington, D.C. to come to get you. He continued, tell your cousin Speedo he's not getting away this time because I'd dot all my I's and cross my T's. They even had fucking Bluebeard, who worked out of the same office, pop his head in there talking about, I'm telling you guys, you're doing a deal with the devil. I would lock all of them up if it were up to me. Somebody's going to wind up dead. I don't know if his guest appearance was part of their psychological mind games to break me down, but I'm not going to lie. The shit was effective cause I already knew how tenacious Bluebeard could be. Greg Kading, a red-headed, freckled-faced dude, sat there, licking his chops, and the session started. Kev, if you lie to us, we already know everything. If you lie to us, all deals are off. My attorney Wayne Higgins told me before we got in there, don't get in there and lie because that's perjury against the government. I kept that in mind as I began to speak, but there was something I needed to get off my chest from the start. Let me tell you motherfuckers something. If y'all think I'm going to run around here buying kilos and setting up my peers and all that old shit, you can lock me the fuck up right now, cause I'm not doing that shit. That's going to get somebody fucking killed. Their initial questions were primarily about Biggie's murder. They were saying, y'all killed Biggie too cause they didn't pay you the money for Tupac. It appeared the Biggie case was the one they were really trying to solve because Biggie's mother had the LAPD tied up in a big-time wrongful death lawsuit, so they thundered down on me hard trying to solve that case in order to get out of that lawsuit. They thought we had hit Biggie too. They were coming at me so hard on the Biggie issue that at one point I paused and silently asked myself, did we kill Biggie? That shit only lasted for a second cause I knew Biggie wasn't us. I'm telling you we didn't have nothing to do with 201 Biggie. That wasn't us. Go get the bitch and she'll tell you everything you need to know about the Biggie killing. They seemed to understand and respect where I was coming from. I can only tell you what the fuck we did. Startled, one of them responded, wait, what do you mean? Clearly shocked and surprised by my words because they were not used to me cooperating with them at all, I went ahead and started at questions about the events leading up to Tupac getting shot. The feds had followed me around for 15 years. It was finally time to get the shit off my chest and over with. Everybody else from my neighborhood was getting off on the shit. Why not get off on my shit? I sang because they promised I would not be prosecuted. I thought they were lying to me, but they kept their word and stopped the indictment. Tore up the whole case. Nobody went to jail. They let my cousins, Boss Man, and some other heavyweights go. They would have taken us all down. The feds have a conviction rate of 98%. The feds don't come unless they have your ass. Shit. They let me go on a case that carried the death sentence. And when you're fucking with the feds, you die in their electric chair within 5 years. My ass was fried and everybody else, all 48 people were going to be fried. They don't play downtown. That's the way they operate. BVVV. From the minute I walked out of their offices, I haven't felt the same. I felt like a dirty, rotten son of a bitch. I still feel awful about what I did to this day. That shit fucked with me mentally because that wasn't me. I did it for my family. I could have went out there like everybody else and faked it. All 18 of them dudes kept selling dope, running the streets and everything. Once I made the decision to cooperate with the government, I could have done like I wanted. As long as I didn't do some blatant shit like murder somebody in the middle of the street, they would have given me a pass. In fact, they might have even helped me. One of the FBI agents told me, man, if you can get me a big bust, I'll give you half the money. I know there are millions right now. We're giving percentages. We can go 50-50. You'll get rich working with us. The government is crooked as can be, but I was done. I stopped selling dope and everything. Even though I had license to sell dope, I didn't feel good within myself. To add insult to injury and make matters way worse, can you imagine how I felt when my son came home one day and told me, yo dad, they have a recording of your voice on the internet. You bullshitting? Get the fuck out of here. There ain't any recordings of me out there, if you say so. He pulled out a laptop and after a minute or so he said, well, listen to this shit then. Sure enough, one of the agents, Greg Kading, apparently sat there with a tape recorder in his pocket talking about he wasn't recording and recorded the proffer session. I know for a fact that I didn't sign anything or give permission for anyone to record the meeting. Then he took the recording when he was no longer working with the LED and profited off of it by using the recording as part of news stories he did with different news and entertainment companies. All while putting my life on the line. That's some crooked shit. No matter how you slice it, that shit was dirty. They've been doing me wrong for a long time. The first question I usually get from people is, how is it that you're not in jail? I've explained the deal that kept my ass out of jail. But I've yet to hear anyone press Greg Kading's ass on how he obtained the infamous Kefa D tapes that was featured in the a weekly newspaper back in 2011 and has been featured in a few TV documentaries and specials on the topic of who shot Tupac and Biggie. The introduction to the a weekly article reads, a 3-hour recording of Kefa D's admissions lifted from LAPD archives by ex-detective Greg Kading. Not sure about you, but where I come from, the word lifted means to steal something, point blank period. Even the Merriam-Webster dictionary agrees that. Lifted means to steal. Former Detective Greg Kading admitted to secretly recording me during an investigation while he was an employee of the Los Angeles Police Department. Then he takes the recording and releases it to the public for his personal financial gain, and nobody checks his ass for it. What Greg Kading did was blatantly unethical. And if it's not illegal, the shit definitely should be. Releasing the tape of our confidential session, which I never agreed to be recorded in the first place, jeopardized my life and also put my family's life in jeopardy. Kading is still out here profiting from his books, interviews, contributing to documentaries, executive producing docuseries, and making movies. Shit, professionals who work in education, hospitals, lawyers, and priests all have standards that protect people's sensitive information from being released to the public. But rogue cops can publish confidential details with impunity. That's some bullshit law enforcement officials often complain about. The difficulty they have in solving cases in black and brown communities because no one wants to talk to the police, usually out of fear that they will be labeled a snitch and the target of retaliation. In my situation, I spoke to the police, not giving a fuck about what people would say because I know the real, and they offered me a sweeter deal than Sammy the Bull Gravano. My point is, with people in the hood already harboring feelings of distrust against law enforcement, when they learn about what a former detective did with my confidential communication and put my family and me in harm's way like that, it's going to make things even worse. My saving grace is the shit I talked about in the session was the shit that I did. Not one person went to jail behind any of the shit I said in my interview. In fact, I saved a lot of motherfuckers from going to jail for extremely long sentences with my cooperation. They were poised to take down 48 different people, some with life sentences. I think about the harm that would have done to the families, the kids and grandkids, the community, and it allows me to rest a little more peacefully at night. It kills me on the inside to know that I told them anything. I'm a soldier. I was the face of the game. I was one of the first guys in Compton to do the shit at that level. Some days I wish I would have gone on in and took it like the soldier that I am. I did something that was